Nagamaru!
When Star Wars died out of fashion, Kenner thought there was really no reason to keep paying Lucasfilms for the rights to Star Wars. After all, if they were not making any money off of it, why did it matter? So rather than write a small check to Lucasfilm, Kenner allowed the rights to drop. Kenner went on, and then in 1991, Hasbro bought Tonka, who at the time was the owner of Kenner. This gave Hasbro the rights to all the toys under the Kenner name, but not Star Wars. When it came to toys for Star Wars, no one really had the rights for them, and no one really cared. To fans, we all knew, or wanted to believe, that Star Wars was just on a break and would return in full force any day. But for most, Star Wars was done, and the merchandising companies believed they had drained all they could from the Star Wars line. No new films were in the works, and the old films had already run their course a number of times in the home video market. What good would it do to get the Star Wars toy rights? To them, Star Wars was dead. Star Wars was starting to make a slow comeback in the early 90s, with two very important projects. First would be the Timothy Zahn novel Heir to the Empire. The kind of sequel to the Star Wars film was a #1 bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list, shocking insiders who thought Star Wars was just a thing of the past. Also, about the same time, Dark Horse Comics released a somewhat sequel to the film called Dark Empire. That, like the novel, became a huge success. The novel and the comics had some of the same readers, but a lot of different types of fans also. It was clear that there was a hunger for Star Wars, and it wasn't just for a small group of fans.
Star Wars! Get ready for the adventure of a lifetime.
The first toy company to reach out to Lucasfilm for the rights to Star Wars was Galoob Toys in 1992 for a small micro-series line. Seeing the success of that, Just Toys reached out to Lucasfilm to release their version of action figures, if you can call them that. These rubbery figures, called Star Wars Bend-Ems, hit toy stores in 1993. This was not your typical action figure, but it was the first time anyone had seen Star Wars action figures at a toy store, and both toy lines was very successful. This let Hasbro and all the other companies know Star Wars wasn't just for the collectors who grew up on it. Hasbro wasn't really worried, as they believed they had the rights to the Star Wars action figures when they bought up Tonka and Kenner. To their shock, they didn't have the rights to Star Wars, and they knew if they didn't have the rights, it would be just a matter of time before some other company would. So Hasbro rushed a meeting with Lucasfilm to talk action figures, and it seems other companies were already coming to Lucasfilm. In fact, Playmates Toys had already contacted Lucasfilm about doing a series of Star Wars figures that were mixed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Galoob and Just Toys already had Star Wars toys on the market, so Hasbro worked fast to get a deal to make action figures for the Star Wars films. Not only would Hasbro get the rights to the original films, they would also have the rights to the upcoming special editions for 1997. All the toy rights at that time were linked to the original trilogy, but Lucas was in the early stages of returning to the Star Wars universe in a new trilogy of films starting with Episode 1. Hasbro might have gotten the rights to Star Wars, and might have the figures in the stores by 1995, but that would do them no good when the prequels were released. Hasbro, along with every toy company there was going to want those rights to the prequels. But at least Hasbro had a leg up than the others. They would launch their Star Wars line in 1995 and have 2 years of sales data that could be used to show Lucasfilm that they were the company that Lucasfilm should go with. Just because Hasbro had a leg up to the other guys doesn't mean the other guys wasn't going to try to take it. In 1997, it was clear Star Wars was back, thanks to the special edition that set records with its early release in 1997, shocking insiders that a movie that had been on VHS for over 10 years could still pack people into the theater. Also, it was now 100% official Lucas was working on Episode 1 for 1999. And in 1997, it was time for Lucasfilm to find out who would help promote the new films with an action figure line. Lucasfilm opened the prequel rights to at least 5 toy companies: Hasbro, Mattel, Playmate Toys, and Galoob. Each company would bid on the rights. Lucas wanted payment up front and much better royalties than they were getting before. The news that Galoob could lose the rights to Star Wars sent its stock down $4. The Galoob Star Wars line may not have been breaking records, but the sales did skyrocket after the release of the special editions. Without Star Wars, Galoob knew things wouldn't be good. The date was set. Lucasfilm wanted to see the deal with each toy company plans by early August. Not only was the toy companies on their edge of their seat, so was Hollywood. This deal could change any upcoming movie toy deal for years to come. Mattel came to Lucasfilm with an offer said to be close to $1 billion, stock options, and 20% of royalties and more. Hasbro offered a guaranteed $300 million, stock options, and 20% of royalties for 9 years. Galoo's plan was to give Lucasfilm a very sizable stake in the company and a 50-50 joint venture. That may not sound like a lot, but it was believed to be the most extraordinary offer ever for a license deal. Some thought the deals were too crazy, saying to make it profitable for the toy company, Star Wars would have to stay a mega force for 6 years. Some insiders didn't find that likely to happen. After all, Jurassic Park was a huge toy line for Hasbro, but fell 70% the year after the film's release. In early October, a deal was made. Hasbro would get the action figure and game rights, as it had with the original films, and Galoob would walk away with the rights to the smaller Micro Series toys, leaving Mattel and Playmate Toys empty-handed. Some believe that the rights came down to more than just the offer, that Lucas gave a lot of credit to Galoob for taking the risk with the Micro Machine Star Wars toys way back in 1992, helping Lucas see that there was still a market for his films. Lucasfilm also was more than happy with Hasbro's Star Wars line already on the market. All of what was offered by the toy company was not released, but we do know that Galoob granted Lucasfilm 3 million shares of stock and would pay Lucasfilm $140 million advance royalties for several years. Hasbro would give Lucasfilm 6.5 million shares of stock, worth about $170 million. It seems Mattel and even Playmate Toys were brought into the bidding just to put a little pressure on Galoob and Hasbro. But by the release of the prequel toys in 1999, it would be all in the hands of Hasbro. Almost a year after the toy deals, Hasbro would buy Galoob for $220 million, giving them the complete toy control over the Star Wars rights. The rights were expected to expire in 2020, but Lucasfilm, now under Disney, reached an undisclosed financial agreement with Hasbro for a multi-year contract. How long was that multi-year deal? It was also undisclosed. It's believed that Hasbro makes a lot less money on Star Wars than any other toy line they have, due to how much they paid for it, plus the royalty fees. But they care more about having the Star Wars brand than letting some other toy company have it. Well, that's a look at the toy fight to get the prequel right. I want to thank you for watching. As always, thumb up if you like my content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk again soon.
Figures and vehicles, each load separate, batteries not included, from Kenner.